This episode of Founders Unfiltered is brought to you by Thompson Hine. Thompson Hine's New Ventures Group represents high-growth companies of all sizes in the technology, healthcare, life sciences, consumer product, media, and medical device industries, and a full range of the angel, venture capital funds, corporate innovation groups, and economic development organizations that invest in them. Instead of a confusing hourly rate-based model, the team at Thompson Hine uses its quick launch platform to offer menu-based pricing to help startups grow their teams and take on outside investors. For more information, please visit thquicklaunch.com. Welcome to Founders Unfiltered. I'm your host, Freddie Coffey. Today I'm here with David Boone, founder of Blend Ed, a course authoring platform that connects professors with curated digital learning materials based on their syllabus. David is a native Clevelander, in fact a boomerang, and we're going to get into that, a Harvard grad, and an ex-corporate staffer. I'm thrilled to talk to David today about his journey. David, welcome to Founders Unfiltered. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Freddie, for having me. Appreciate it.
So I'm thrilled, as I said, to talk to you today. I want to get right into it and talk about one of my favorite things in the world, and that is Cleveland, Ohio. You are a Cleveland boomerang. I don't want to, date this webcast at all, but we know we're in the middle of winter in Cleveland, so that's fun. But let's ignore that part of it, and let's start about your journey to Cleveland, and your journey back to Cleveland, and give us some of the highlight reel of your pilgrimage to the coasts, and then back to Northeast.
Yeah, absolutely. I've now gone East Coast, West Coast, and then back. And so I got a little bit of a taste of it all. Grew up here, Cleveland is home. Grew up on 116th and Woodland, or at least, spent a lot of my formative years there. And when I was probably 8th grade, 9th grade, we moved to the Glenville neighborhood, ran into some trouble there. And ended up homeless, and that sort of is what most people know me by, is the homeless to Harvard story. But since then, a lot of incredible things have happened. I went to Harvard. Thank goodness I graduated with very, very, very little debt, which I'm always super grateful for, and had the opportunity to intern at some incredible companies, ultimately deciding to work at Microsoft. And so when I graduated from Harvard in 2016, I moved out west, and I spent a couple of years living in Seattle, working at Microsoft, doing all sorts of cool stuff, but really in a data science space there, all sorts of analytics and reporting. And the whole time I was there, I just knew I had to come back. The whole time it was a matter of how can I take what I learned here and bring it back to the nest and start to build, the dream for myself and ultimately for the people I care about in my city.
Well, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say we're certainly happy that you are back. And before we talk more about starting your company in Cleveland, let's introduce that company itself. Talk about Blend Ed. Give me that 60-second elevator pitch that I'm sure you've done.
Absolutely. I mean, this thing is ever changing too. We're an early stage company, but here's why we exist. Blend Ed is a platform to help educators to manage and sort of find and organize all of the great digital learning materials that are being developed to teach in this new normal of some in person, some online, and hence why we came up with the name Blend Ed. It was really about blending the best of online and in person, and how do we empower educators to be able to do that and ensure that learning happens for their students no matter what the constraints of technology are.
So that seemed very practiced and polished. I appreciate that. But I know as an entrepreneur you say that a lot of times. So you launched a company in your hometown. Yes. What are some of the pros and cons of launching a tech startup in Cleveland, Ohio?
Well, I would say the pros. I mean, fundamentally, Cleveland is a really great city to live in. And I think that when you talk about doing something that's difficult to start in a tech company, you want to like where you live. And so I think that's a major pro that Cleveland has going. The affordability index, the ability to sort of see it all within sort of like a 30-mile drive, right? You have the national park, you have Lake Erie, and then you have all of the amenities of of a great city with great restaurants and, music and art and all of those things. So Cleveland being a great city is a huge value. In addition to that, there's a lot of capital here, right? And so I think, I'll talk about how that's a con as well, but there is access to incredible capital resources once you kind of learn how it works and you kind of learn how to navigate it and connect with the right people. And I think that leads me to some of the cons, right? I think one of the majors is you don't have as much early stage funding. When I was first sort of thinking about starting a company in the ed tech space, I was able to call up one of my mentors from Seattle, and I was just asking for advice. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about making a jump and starting a company. And within 15 minutes of that phone call, she's like, hey, I have a $25,000 slot in my angel investing for the year. Do you want it? Just that simple, right? And to get that first $25,000, one is the confidence boost to make the leap, to feel like maybe I should go after that, but also to give me the resources to do some of those early things, like develop a really crispy pitch, hire designers and other things that really kind of help lead into a bigger round. That capital, almost all of that early capital, came from outside of the region, and that came from connections that I developed elsewhere. And I think that's one of the big barriers here, especially for folks who aren't tapped into friends and family networks, right? So, I shared a little bit about my story, but I grew up, under the poverty line. My entire 18 years of living in Cleveland, I lived under the poverty line before I moved back here after college. And so my network wasn't super strong above the poverty line, which meant that there wasn't a lot of friends and family to go in and get resources from. And so I think that's one of the areas that's kind of a con, is that early stage funding, that idea stage, that, hey, I want to do something. I didn't necessarily feel like Cleveland was a great place to do that. But I think the pandemic helped, because I think some of these angels that I was able to get to write checks were more willing to write checks outside of their own region because of the situation with like nothing being in person at that time anyway.
So let's stay on the financial discussion here. You recently closed on a $1.6 million pre-seed round. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a big deal. Tell us more about your experience raising that round.
Yeah, no trouble. So just to make sure the people out in the world know, we've raised 1.4, not 1.6.
Oh, okay.
I want to make sure the numbers out there correct.
I mean, we can find that point two somewhere.
Hey, I hope so. If we can get off this call with another point two, I'll take it. But no, raising that round honestly it was a learning experience for me. I definitely learned that whatever time and resource you have budgeted for, double it. It took twice as long as I hoped it would take. But what I also learned about the process is that you really have to have a diverse strategy, right? And I think one of the things that we sort of started early on was we thought we could make sort of the FOMO bucket happen in Cleveland, right? And that's something, as a fundraising strategy, you want to get that first sort of like 30 to 40% rolling, with the low hanging fruit. And I thought that given, having started the company in a short period of time, been accepted into a top rate accelerator, and really having had a lot of success there, I would be able to come back home and be able to say, hey, look, folks, I have this company. We're trying to do this really great thing. It's really hard. It takes money. It takes people, and I need your support. I thought I would see much more support from the region than I did, and that unfortunately was not the case. And so in a lot of ways, ended up, like fundraising outside of the region. I did a lot of work in New York City. I did some work out in Silicon Valley, and was able to bring, and even in Pittsburgh, funny enough, not that far from here, but I was able to get some resources from Pittsburgh and bring them back to the region. But I didn't find that the region really supported, with the exception of Jumpstart, which has been an early investor from the very, very early days. So that $25,000 check was followed by a check from Jumpstart there shortly after. So,
how were those conversations that you were having outside of region, in New York or in Pittsburgh or in anywhere else, really? Even going back to idea stage and talking about some of the funding from Seattle and things like that. How were those conversations that you were having there different than conversations that you were having here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the maturity of the ecosystem around tech startups in those places is just a bit further along. And so the perspectives that people are bringing are very grounded in the reality of a tech startup. I can't sit in front of you and promise you that this is going to work out. Right, I believe in what I'm doing. I can promise you I'm not going to give up on it, right? That I'm going to find a way to help educators all over the world to manage in this new normal, right? I can tell you that a million times over. What I need from you is to trust that I'm going to keep working on it and to kind of support me in that. And I think, so the difference in the conversations really, became one of what they were asking for. In the case of the folks in Silicon Valley, in New York, and even in Pittsburgh, they get it, right? I have this vision, this mission, this drive, this hunger, and they're willing to make an early bet on that before there's a lot of proof. But in the region, people just wanted a lot more proof. And not only did they want a lot more proof, so the bar was higher, but they also wanted it at a valuation that was much, much lower. And so that, they were asking for a much larger chunk of the company than I thought was fair, given, the things we had already accomplished, right? And I think that, that became a really limiting factor on who I could work with in terms of fundraising in the region to really kind of, like I said, create that first FOMO bucket of dollars. I ended up going with, different funds outside of the region instead.
So in a more mature entrepreneurial ecosystem, I guess, would you say that the risk tolerance is a lot higher? It seems like they're not trying to hedge their bets as much.
Yeah, I would say they understand that in order to build a venture scale business, the first couple of steps aren't so calculated, right? They really are explorative. And so, you get a pre-seed round, you have to give someone enough money that they can develop a product, that they can get into market, to start to validate some things. But even after that early, round of pre-seed dollars, the answers are still really shaky. And I think that again is complete expectation outside of the region. And here, when people start hearing $1 million or more, they want something that's like, hey, have you generated some revenue? Do you have some evidence that you can generate revenue? And that's just not the perspective. And with the cost of talent, particularly tech talent, being pretty much universal at this point, right? It's not that much cheaper to hire an engineer in Ohio than it is anywhere else. You need the same size rounds to build the same sorts of companies, right? And so it's unfortunate, but that's in the early stages. All of it's tech dollars, right? 80% of the budget is tech people, which costs a lot of money, which means you have to raise a lot of money.
Especially now that an engineer in Ohio can work anywhere else in the environment that we're in now.
It's no longer, those boundaries are gone. Those are gone completely.
You scroll down the list on Indeed, and it's just remote, right? Yep. All right, well, let's say that you are, the man at the top, and you're pulling all the strings in Cleveland's startup scene. If you could change one thing about the startup scene or the VC scene here in Cleveland, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for me, knowing what I need as a founder and as an operator of an early stage company, I need access to capital. I need access to talented people. Those are the two things that I kind of need to look for in wherever I decide to set up shop. And so if I'm pulling all the strings, I think we have to have a twofold strategy. How do we get the talented people here? I get everything is remote and you can hire from anywhere, but I think the more we can have the people, the more value we can create in this region, right? Because, yes, everything's remote, but a lot of these companies are still trying to hire someone who's in San Francisco or elsewhere because they know that the talent density is there. And so a strategy for improving the talent density, and I've shared this idea with others. I don't own this idea, but I think Cleveland makes an incredible destination for remote workers. Even folks who aren't working for Cleveland-based companies, we should be trying to attract them to Cleveland because it is such a great place to live and it's such an affordable place to live. So all of the people who vacated Silicon Valley and went to Texas, some of those folks should have came to Cleveland. There are plenty of people out there who are from Buffalo or elsewhere and don't mind the cold in the wintertime or don't mind traveling in the winter and could do that affordably from Cleveland. And I think, we have to increase our talent density, especially if ever going to build a tech ecosystem. And right now we just have so much brain drain, right? Folks like myself very rarely come back. And so we have to find some incentive for that. The other thing that I would do is right now when I talk to some of the high net worth individuals in Cleveland, it's a lot of old money. There's not as much new money in the ecosystem, but that means that there are a lot of old money managers, and I think some of those old money managers need to get together and figure out what they can do to support the early stage ecosystem, because again, you have to hit the idea stage for really great things to happen. Because if you lose me between idea and growth stage, I'm not going to come back to Cleveland after I've raised a Series A. That doesn't make sense, right? I'm going to stay where I am. I have a lot of ties to wherever I am. And so if we want to see that change, we have to think about, all right, how do we take some portion of these funds that are going into Series A through C, or at this point you can get to Series H because of the way the private dollars work. How do we get those folks who are investing there to dedicate some of their resources to the much, much earlier idea stage companies without the need for me to be a cousin, friend, godson of someone that right? And I think, because of course, like I said, I've heard plenty of stories of people who have that network, but there are so many great founders who don't. And who come to Cleveland looking for access. And so how do we improve that, I think is the other side that I would be looking at. It's the early stage dollars and then the talent density problem.
Well, let's talk about where you are pulling the strings, and that's in your own startup. A lot of founders have an idea, sector expertise, but have to fill development gap. You have the tech background. What skills did you have to hone to launch Blended?
All of them, even the tech skills. I mean, it's a job where you learn enough every week that you could probably write a book. I mean, truly, especially in the very, very early days, I was just constantly absorbing so much information about, how to start from scratch, right? I mean, I'd worked in tech, but in working at Microsoft and Lockheed and Rockwell, you're never working on something from scratch. There's this huge code base that you're pulling from. There's this huge knowledge base that you have access to. And so, really starting something from scratch was a learning experience on the technical side, and how to build an infrastructure and really, put ourselves in a position for product agility, which is really what you need in the early stages. That's the other difference, right? Microsoft doesn't need agility, right? They know what they need to sell. They know the improvements they need to make. And so there's a straight line sort of linear approach that they can practice. In our world, nothing's linear. Today is one thing, tomorrow is another, and all you're doing is just testing hypotheses to see what sticks. And so, that's the other thing, is designing experiments, learning more about that, and really how do I design product experiments to learn from the market is another big piece. And then marketing, right? Fundraising. I mean, there's so many areas where I just had to skill up quickly and learn from other greats, right? Listen where I can, meet people, meet other operators, join networks, right? So I joined a fellowship called On Deck in the last year that's been able to, kind of support me in that, meeting a bunch of operators and founders in the ed tech space, and then the accelerator that I joined as well, sort of like, I called it Founders Bootcamp. It taught me the lingo of this fundraising craziness that it is really, not the most straightforward or easy to understand system, but once you understand it and you can speak the language, you learn how to navigate, and it becomes a lot easier. Not easy, but easier than when you're like trying to figure out what's going on through a steel wall. Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the edtech space that you're working in and the problems that you're solving. But just before I do that, one more question. Just because you mentioned fundraising, I know that you've talked to a lot of investors. I don't know if you want to tell the viewers how many, but
I think my update email list, and this is not a perfect list because I'm sure I've forgotten people at this point, is 95 strong. So I've had conversations with at least 95 investors over the last 18 plus months of building Blended.
And the word no is obviously a part of a lot of those conversations, or can be a part of most of those conversations. How have the no's you've received played into your success as a founder and as a fundraiser.
You get really used to no. I mean, you get so adjusted to it that it doesn't even really impact you the same anymore. But I have to say, one of the things I have to tell people who ask me about fundraising, other founders as well, is you almost have to put yourself in a position to get no's as often, as quickly as possible, just to build up the sort of calloused skin, right? The thicker skin around it. Because the first time we pitched, I had this friend who was working at this huge firm and was like, well, when you're ready, you should come talk to us. And I didn't know what ready meant because I had just started a company a month ago, not even a month ago, a couple weeks ago. But I said, we'll be ready Monday, right? And I just went for it. And it was the most painful pitch I've ever had in my life. I think the guy walked his dog halfway through it. Like, it was just disappeared from the screen. And I mean, that hurt. For a while, we didn't want to talk about our major vision, what we saw in the future. We got really nervous that maybe it was our pitch or we were too ambitious or whatever the case may be. And it had an impact on how we pitch. But eventually, after getting a few more rejections, after changing the pitch and rewording and just realizing no is a part of the game, it actually doesn't say anything about your idea, your capability, your team. It's just not the right fit for every reason, right? Too early, too late, not enough this, too much of that, whatever, right? That you'll hear all the reasonings in the world. You kind of have to stay true to what you know about the market and just develop that confidence to go into the room and say, hey, look, I've learned all these great things about the market and there's this opportunity that I would love to have you be a part of, right? And that's really the framing that you have to go into these rooms with. And that's when I started seeing the most success, is once I kind of realized that.
David, you're the king of giving me easy segues because the market, okay? We all know that there's lots of pain points in higher ed. What are some of the areas that can be improved through tech? And specifically, what problem is your platform seeking to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. The problems are too numerous to count, right? I mean, I really think that, and they vary, right? They vary in which stakeholder has that problem the most severely. And so, we've done a lot of research and realized a lot of things. And in that research, we realized that the person that's least emphasized in higher education from a product offering and sort of solution standpoint is the instructor, which is kind of mind-boggling to think about, but it's true, right? In higher education, the instructor is the interface between, in all education, the instructor oftentimes is the interface between learning, but even greater in higher education where people are paying to be there, right? Even in the public education sphere, in higher education, you're still paying some money to be there. You become the face of the company, so to speak. And to not have the right supports for these individuals just seems like a huge miss and opportunity. And so really when we started out, we were just helping instructors at all levels, K through 16, to figure out their plans for what are you going to do if you have to teach remotely next semester, or you have to teach blended, or you have to teach that. And in that, we started to realize some gaps in how the different technologies work together and how, you can orchestrate them and manage them and organize them, but then also gaps in the availability and the searchability, the discoverability of really great digital learning materials. Coming to realize that still in higher education, most of the materials are coming from the textbook publisher, which great textbook publishers, I don't want to speak ill of them, but they're an antiquated system of distributing information. We've seen the world change so much, right? People have access to incredible information at their fingertips. You can learn more in TikTok in 5 minutes than you can in most classrooms in an hour. Why is that, right? It's because the medium has changed so much and evolved, and there's been so many advances in how to teach people, but those aren't showing up in the classroom yet. And so we got fascinated with how do we bring the best innovations in learning to every classroom, regardless of how well resourced a classroom is, right? I talked to my professors at Harvard, and some of them were like, hey, these are really interesting topics and hard problems to solve, but that's why I hire the best head TA I can find, and they take care of that. And then I talked to some of my professors I had at Cleveland State when I was doing post-secondary there, and those folks are like, I just wish I had the time to get to something like that, to even think about those things, right? Like I don't even have the time, I don't have the resource. And so how do we make it so that we level the playing field, so that you don't just get these incredible digital learning experiences in the most well-resourced classrooms, but they find their way into classrooms where the educator might be an adjunct, may have zero instructional support, and really need that help to find and organize and sort of create those digital learning experiences for their students. And so that's what BlendEd seeks to do. It seeks to be a platform where educators can organize these great digital lessons, but then also where they can share those digital lessons with other educators. So the best at developing really great digital content can see the value of their content in real time, right? They can see other educators use it and earn royalties on those materials, right? Actually monetize being a great instructor in this medium, providing other instructors with the resources they need to be a great instructor in the medium.
So it seems like you guys were focused on whether or not you were exclusively higher ed or a little bit below that, and the spectrum is kind of narrowed there from the beginning, but you were focused on the teaching community from the beginning, as opposed to a lot of ed tech solutions that are focused on the student community. What was the kind of the initial thinking from your perspective on which way to attack the problem?
Yeah, it became a differentiator very, very early on once we realized how the market works, right? I mean, understanding that so many solutions really kind of say outright, hey, your teacher stinks, like here's an alternative path to learning, right? I mean, that's really the messaging. And, where the disconnect came to play for me is like, okay, that can be true, that, professors and educators at all levels can just be having a hard time or just have too much to manage. All of this can be true. But what shouldn't be happening is that students need to completely abandon that mode and that model and do something totally different. There should be some way to support that mode and that model. And in particular, when you think about really the state of the world when it comes to earning credentials for skills. Yes, everyone wants to say, hey, go do a boot camp and go do this and go do, you can do anything now. You can learn online, you can get a certificate from one of the big, MOOC providers, massive online course providers. And those are all awesome, but nothing still to this day has as much power in the workforce as a degree. And, for us to, tell folks who, one, can't afford the degree that, hey, go this other route that won't be as valued by the working community, or two, can afford it, but just can't find their way into a classroom where they're actually being supported and learning, that they should, all right, I know you spent money on this class, you should go spend money elsewhere, is broken, right? I think we have to, again, think about how we fix the model that people value, right? When I graduated from high school, it was either you were going to college or you were, going off to the workforce, and there was no real in between. So how do we make college better? And how do we do that? Well, we do it by working with the instructors and making sure that experience in the classroom supports learning skills that are valuable in the workforce. And that's the focus that we wanted to hit on.
I love that. I love the idea in for software that's student focused, like you mentioned, the idea of your professor's no good, use this instead, whereas you guys are just hitting the first part of that sentence and changing the fact that the professor may be no good. Maybe they're overworked, maybe they can't find the subject material, maybe their subject material is outdated, and they're beholden to whatever they're given and whatever they have to teach, So, that's great. Is there anything else like BlendEd in the market? And if so, what sets you guys apart? And you don't have to name your competitors. Right?
I won't be doing that. There are some great players in the market. I will say that, though. I mean, there's some really awesome folks who are trying to sort of tackle the same layer of the stack, right? Which is really how do we make this instructor to student interaction more fruitful, right? When it comes to learning, because all of us have the same mission, right? To help people learn. Right. I think, really that has to be at the center of anything you're doing in education is how do we help people learn? Some people focus on how do we help people earn, and I think that has value too. So I should take that back. But we focus on the learning piece specifically. And so these players that are also in this space what I like about what they're doing is they are trying to push the envelope and give the support to the instructor. What I don't like about it is they really aren't trying to push the envelope far enough. I think what we really have to get to is a world where we're not beholden to publishers, because I think there's just a supply chain issue, right? Of like, how long does it take for something to get from an idea stage for a book or idea stage for a video to actually available online for someone to consume? In the traditional publishing world, that could be 10 to 18 months or even longer, right, to get there. In the world we live in with social media and otherwise, the moment something happens, the moment there's an insight, there's material about it, right? And there's this incredible opportunity to leverage the experts, the professors that teach at more than 5 institutions, which is, publishers all go for the top professors at the top institutions, right? But there are incredible professors at Tri-C or Lorain County Community College or Cleveland State or otherwise that would never get a publishing deal but have incredible materials to share with other colleagues who need to teach the same topics. How do we create that world where that professor can actually, syndicate the really awesome and incredible work that they've done to help their students learn so that other students can learn as well? And I think that's the real innovation that we're trying to hit. And it starts with just like, hey, how do you codify those experiences into transferable objects that don't live inside of a learning management system or inside of some proprietary cloud? This becomes completely portable. Anyone can access it. And that's really what we're starting with our original platform. It's like, hey, build your course experience here, right? It becomes this thing where, yes, it works in Canvas, it works in Blackboard, it works in Moodle, wherever else you need to teach. But it also gives you this thing that lives outside of all of those systems that you can share with your colleagues. And one day we'll be able to support you actually monetizing it and being able to say, okay, I made $500 from this really great lesson that I've developed around, economics using the NFL as the case study.
So we've got some of the best lessons being built by some of the best professors anywhere with the ability to share. So let's talk about how you sell that a little bit. My second favorite topic, I said earlier that Cleveland is my favorite topic. So let's talk about my second favorite topic, which is marketing. And you had this really cool idea about engaging teachers through an award incentive. Yeah. So I want to give you the opportunity to kind of plug that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to that idea of it should be any educator anywhere that should be celebrated for the great work that they do in the classroom. One of the things that we're working on at Blend Ed is every single month, we want to recognize an educator for their incredible work. I mean, this has been an incredibly difficult couple of years when it comes to teaching, right? I mean, every day it seems like something has changed, something is different. I have to figure out this, I have to move that. I have twice as many students because a teacher's out or whatever the case may be. You have to adapt and evolve so quickly in the education space. We're really looking to celebrate those educators and really to say, hey, look, you can be, celebrated as someone who's, through all odds, created really incredible learning experiences for your students in this chaotic world. And so, one of the things that we're doing is we're starting to develop that certificate, right? That sort of acknowledgement and just celebrating those folks. And that'll come with a small little gift as well from the company to just say thank you. A big part of that is access to our tools for free. And so that's one way that we market. The other thing is, we just want to be the best resource for you, right? Even if our platform needs more work, right? Or there's, features that aren't quite there yet. We're looking at how can we build a content experience that helps you evolve your teaching no matter what tools you're using. And so one of the big things that we're sort of working on now as well is just like, I'm new to this. How can I get started, right? And so really for new educators, particularly new professors, think adjuncts, grad students, to sort of help them with a toolbox that can get them started right away with all the best practices and pedagogy, quickly.
Excellent. Well, we've talked a lot about your business and fundraising, which I really appreciate, and all of your market differentiation. I love the platform. I think the idea is genius, and I hope you just continue to grow, because I see my wife is a teacher now. It's elementary school, but it's still, kind of tertiarily live in that arena, so I see what is needed everywhere, I guess. But it wouldn't be Founders Unfiltered if we didn't talk about the founder himself. So I want to ask you a few questions, just personally, David. First of all, you talked about being on the coasts and working for some major corporate players in the tech industry. What was it like to leave your corporate job?
There's two sides to every story, right? So I think I'll tell you what it was like for me. My fiance may have a different opinion about what it was like for her, but put simply, I mean, I knew I had to make the jump, and so and I think the people that I worked with at Microsoft knew that I had to make the jump eventually. And so I don't think it came to a surprise to anyone, but it certainly was non-trivial to say, hey, I'm going to leave a very, very comfortable job that probably isn't going anywhere, right? In terms of a company that is one of the largest in the world. And I'm going to go and start something where I'm going to make $0 and 0 cents for the foreseeable future. That takes a lot to sort of navigate, especially when you toss in the factor of I am the first in my family to go to college and to accept a corporate job and to have this opportunity to make more money than I ever dreamed of, right? And really things were going well at Microsoft. It was constant promotions and extra bonus, and it was very, very awesome opportunity to really kind of get my foot in the door and establish a name for myself in the corporate world. But what was missing for me in all of it was mission and ownership. It is one thing to be delivering on someone else's mission and vision, and then there's another thing to have one of your own. And since I've as far back as I can remember, I've wanted to own something. I mean, I remember as a little kid, people asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I always had different answers, but one of the common ones was, hey, I want to own my own business, right? And even when I was telling people I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, or I want to be that, I was still thinking, and I'm going to own my own business. People are like, well, what kind of business? Like, it could be a corner store, it could be a dry cleaners. I don't really care, right? I have no real understanding of what it even means, but I want to own something, and I want to create something of value that the world, can use. And that was always a part of my fold. And so when I got to Microsoft, I just made that clear to everyone around me. And so, leaving, I left on very good terms because people just knew, they respected it, and I kind of went for it. But then, like I said, the other side of that is, I had to sit down with my then girlfriend, now fiance, and say, hey, I know we live a very comfortable life. It's going to get a little less comfortable for a little while. And we made that jump together, and I'm really grateful to have her support in all of this as well.
So maybe I should ask your fiance this instead of you, but how has launching your startup affected you on a personal level? Like, how do you maintain balance among all of the madness?
Yeah. I mean, one, it's just a harder job. I don't think there's a corporate job that is anything similar to being a startup founder in terms of just like, you own the good and the bad. Every day is up to you what you make it. And so, it's a much harder job. But, on a personal level, I was, I think, smart to not have been a big spender in my time at Microsoft. So it wasn't like my lifestyle scaled astronomically. And so I've been able to transition pretty comfortably in terms of like what I've been able to accomplish with Blended. And then in addition to that, I just feel happier. I mean, yes, this job is so much harder, but I tell people all the time, I've never felt more sure of anything I've done. I've never felt more comfortable in anything that I've done. Whereas, like, I know that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I know it won't be the last time that I give it a swing as well. I think this is the role for me, which is to be a founder.
You mentioned networks earlier, and your, I won't say struggle, but your necessity to establish professional networks, but that you did have such strong support from your family and friends. Talk about that personal network. How has the support of your friends and family contributed to your success?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I feel very blessed. I think a lot of people, want to know, how did you do it, right? And that's always the question people want to know, no matter what you sort of accomplish. It's like, how did it happen? Mm-hmm. Because I think, just seeing the finished result, people are always curious. And my answer has to be, with anything that I've accomplished to date, is through the love and support and the care that I had available through my family and those like family, right? And so, I feel very fortunate and blessed that, even though I was giving up a very, very comfortable job, Christmas gifts weren't quite as lavish the last couple of years as they have been in years prior. I've never felt any sort of tension from my family or again, those like family at all, as well as, they understand, right? I don't feel any social pressures to be present for this or to do that, because again, it's a 24/7, 365 gig, right? You never really get a day off, and it takes a lot to sort of deliver on that. And so to have folks who support you unquestionably, undoubtedly, unconditionally makes all the difference. And I think that's the one thing, if I had to say, is my good fortune. It is the people that I have that love me and care for me and help me to make my dreams come true.
It's excellent. If you were going to support someone, if you were giving advice to an entrepreneur just starting out, or maybe even if you were, you got access to a time machine and you could go talk to David at the very beginning of all this, what advice would you have for a founder now that you've been through quite a bit, for someone who's just getting started?
First thing I would say to them is write it all down. I'm telling people now, I wish I had done it, but maybe I'll start. I'm like, look, even if BlendDev fails, there's a book in this one, because there's just so much to learn, so much you see and experience. And so, I think someone who maybe already keeps a journal or something should make that journal publicly available to the world at some point. So that's one. The other piece is you really... you have to believe in yourself. I'm not saying believe in your idea. Which you do. You have to do that too. But you really have to believe in yourself, because before you know it, you'll be so intertwined with your company. Like, your company's success will feel like your success, and you have to get to a point where that is not the thing that holds you back, right? If the concern, the lack of self-confidence, the doubt, and then ultimately where those no's again aren't personal reflections on you or your character or your capability. And I think that building up that sort of strong foundation of just like self-belief is critical, because you're going to get no's left and right. You're going to get people who are going to tell you your idea is completely stupid, right? And again, you just have to believe enough in yourself. It doesn't mean you're stupid, right? Your idea may actually be stupid. I can't tell you one way or the other, right? Like, some people think my idea is stupid, right? I don't want to be like, hey, believe in it, believe in your idea no matter what, believe in your company no matter what. But if you believe in yourself no matter what, then you'll figure it out. Because there's so few companies that are, in the S&P 500 or the Dow, right? That when they started off, they were selling the same thing that they're selling today, right? Like, your company's going to evolve, it's going to change. What's going to be the constant is you. And so you really have to build up you first, and then the company comes into play and everything else starts to fall in.
All right. Well, I hope everybody's writing that down. Because I think that's really sound advice and fantastic. David, I think this is a perfect place for us to take a little break. We're going to have a little commercial for our next Founders Unfiltered. We'll be right back with our Founders Fast 5, our lightning round with David Boone. Stick around. Thanks again for tuning into this month's episode of Founders Unfiltered. And we're going to get right back to David Boone here in the lightning round in just a second. But first, I want to invite you to join us next month on Wednesday, February 23rd for the next Founders Unfiltered, featuring Dominique King, founder of the I Heart My HBCU mobile app. In 2017, King was the first to bridge spare change technology to support all 104 historically black colleges and universities with the I Heart My HBCU iOS and Android platform launch. As a graduate of Howard University in Washington, D.C., King is passionate about preserving the rich heritage and viability of HBCUs. By creating her app, King aimed to develop a novel way to support HBCUs combating institutional financial challenges and producing scholars and leaders of today and tomorrow. So again, join us next month on Wednesday, February 23rd for Founders Unfiltered with Dominique King. All right, we are back with David Boone of Blend Ed. David, it's our Founders Fast 5. This is our lightning round. Here's how it works. I'm going to ask you 6 questions. You have to answer 5 of them, so you get 1 pass. If you make it through all 6 and you answer all 6, then you get our special Founders Unfiltered award, which is me golf clapping next to my microphone right here. Are you ready? All right. First of all, what teaches you more about entrepreneurship? Going to Harvard or failure?
Failure.
Easy. No explanation needed on that one, huh?
You're flat out failure. Harvard's a great place, but it doesn't teach you about entrepreneurship the same way failing does.
All right, so you're straddling the line between higher education and big tech. So I need to know, Mac or PC?
Oh, Mac.
Oh, man. All right, I'm telling Microsoft. Okay. What is the weirdest advice you've ever had from a VC?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, we've heard so much, and I wouldn't call it weird, but just, the flavor of the weird is when, someone just really doesn't get it. And so there was one call where at the end of it, and I took blame for this. I was like, maybe I just misunderstood or miscommunicated, where the investor said, all right, so when are you going to open up a physical location? And I was like, huh? Like, what did I miss? I missed something. And I'm just stuck. So yeah, so that was the weirdest. They just didn't get it.
I mean, if somebody's going to print out syllabus or something, I guess if Kinko's is going to be your physical location. You said this probably wasn't going to be your first one, so pitch me your next venture.
Oof. It's funny because it's really funny because I've thought about this one, but it would be a venture called Day One, and the whole gig would be taking people from retail and service industries where there's becoming a rapid automation sort of cycle and transition them into corporate roles. Like, how do we get them from a retail gig to day one of their first corporate career? And so that would be the jig. Still in education, but very much focused on
I was going to say, you're all about that education.
Hey, I told you, one thing is to help people learn. The other thing is to help people earn. Those are the 2 things that I think you have to focus on in education. My next one will be in the earning category.
What is the most addictive thing about startup culture?
Oh, man. It's I mean, just getting to see customers face the first time they use your product and like it. Because there are times when I do sessions and I'm like, whoa, yeah, that's a gap, and it's painful. But the moment you get one of those delight, just like that delightful moment, that light bulb moment, that's addicting. You want to do more and more of that, and that gets you on the right flywheel.
All right. Well, hey, you've done 5 questions. We've only got one more, and I know you're going to answer this one. A boomerang who grew up here, you went to the coast, you came back to Cleveland. What's your favorite Cleveland-based small business?
I'll get mixed on this one, but it's the one thing that every time I come to Cleveland, I have to go. Kim's Wings. I go and get myself some chicken wings and fries with the sauce on it. And yeah, every time, no matter what. Even if I'm here for just 48 hours, when I was working at Microsoft, I had to make a stop at Kim's.
All right, well, you're going to get the golf clap here, and a clap for the wings as well.
Nice. Thanks, Freddie.
Hey, you're through it, man. You're through the lightning round. You're through all of our questions on Founders Unfiltered. I just want to say, once again, thank you so much, David, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Great conversation and great advice for other entrepreneurs out there that are where you were, which I think is where that advice is definitely needed. Any parting words?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share more about what we do at Blended. And I'm excited to be back in the region and to be building here. So I'm looking to meet people who are also building here. So anyone who's listening who wants a founder, operator friend, I'm looking to make more founder, operator, or just friends in general, build the network back up now that we're coming, hopefully, fingers crossed, coming out of this pandemic.
Well, thank you again, David, and we're excited to see where you and where Blended go in the future. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us and watching today. Whether you're looking for capital services or connections, Jumpstart is here and ready to help start or scale your entrepreneurial journey today by visiting us online at jumpstartinc.org.